Hello class, my name is Courtney, and today I'm going to present Group 3's final learning contract project entitled Arizona's Constitutional Expenditure Limitations, the case study of Yuma. In this presentation, I'll be sharing our group's main takeaways and highlights from our case study of the city of Yuma, Arizona. Yuma is only one of 8 cities in Arizona that still use something called an annual expenditure limit that has not been adjusted. So the annual expenditure limitation is a constitutional provision that makes it so local governments can only spend a certain amount of money every fiscal year. While this provision was put into the Constitution to curb spending and make budgets financially sustainable long term, unfortunately, in the modern day and age, about 35 years after this measure's passed, it's kind of doing the opposite. To display the harms of what an annual expenditure limitation can do, I'm going to show you how the city of Yuma actually suffers. The city of Yuma's overall budget is about $472 million. However, because of this annual expenditure limit, they are only allowed to spend about $161 million a year. This creates a divide in how much they need to spend and what they can legally spend. And this isn't fiscal irresponsibility. The city of Yuma actually raises enough revenue every year that they could cover this entire budget on their own. They're just not allowed to spend it because of the outdated nature of the formula that calculates the annual expenditure limitation at the state level. And up until 2024, the city of Yuma was actually always able to keep within the annual expenditure limitation. However, in 2026, they're expected to spend more than that for the first time. There's huge consequences for cities and townships that don't abide by this annual expenditure limitation. They can actually lose out on state appropriated funding. So you may be asking, how can the city of Yuma avoid losing their state funding? Well, they can either pass a home rule exception, a one-time override, or a permanent base adjustment. All 3 of those options are ways that cities and townships can make adjustments to their annual expenditure limit so that they can meet all of their demands for public services. Each of these 3 options have their merits. Our group decided that we would recommend that the city of Yuma pass a permanent base adjustment. They don't have to hold elections on a rotating basis like they would have to with a home rule or a one-time override. Essentially, the permanent base adjustment means that the baseline that the state typically gives to Yuma is raised to a level that voters agree with. Voters themselves have to pass this adjustment proposal. If voters don't pass that permanent base adjustment, essential services like fire, police, EMS, and roads will have to be cut in order to keep within the annual expenditure limitation. You may be asking, why can't Yuma just delay a big project in order to save some money and meet that cap rather than cutting employees? The answer to that is that capital funding, grant funding, and enterprise funding are already exempt from the annual expenditure limitation. So no cuts can be made in those areas that would actually impact that threshold in any meaningful way. Thus, this measure has to pass for citizens in Yuma to keep the level of service that they are used to experiencing. Additionally, if the city continues to grow and the annual expenditure limit doesn't grow with it, people will actually start to suffer, and so will the infrastructure and their safety. Local governments passing adjustments to their annual expenditure limitations is nothing new in the state of Arizona. In fact, only 8 out of 91 cities and towns still use that pure annual expenditure limitation formula, with Yuma being one of them. So a lot of states have already, passed home rule, permanent base adjustments, and one-time overrides to ensure that they're able to keep their high level of services. This suggests to our group that the AEL formula is no longer a really good test of fiscal sustainability or responsibility in our modern day and age. As costs for building materials, to do roads, things like that grow, the annual expenditure limit, because of its archaic formula, does not have a way to account for that. Just inflation overall as a standard measure. Passing this permanent base adjustment will better allow the city of Yuma to plan for multiple years of fiscal spending, which they traditionally have not been able to do, and will also allow them to keep their high level of public service, which has attracted newcomers to the area and allowed the city to rapidly grow, which has led to the need for this annual expenditure limitations adjustment. In order for the city of Yuma and other governments throughout the state of Arizona to properly help their citizens and serve their needs, they need to move beyond this old formula of the annual expenditure limitation and embrace something new. Thank you.